Meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. In the virtual world we are now becoming used to. Lori made a point this morning, I think 27 weeks, is that right? And counting?
23.
23, okay. We probably will make 27, but 23 currently. And this has become our new way of not just working, but also our new way of living, impacting us individually as well as those that we serve, and those that we serve with the organizations that we're part of and with our time invested here in Greater Dallas Workforce Solutions. Each week, each month, each day, different times. I know for our organization at Southwest Airlines, we've actually offered voluntary separation packages and offering time that you could take off for the next 12 to 18 months, actually. And we had over 4,000 people that have taken the separation packages, and they're nice packages. The one thing is you're going to miss them, people that we've worked with for many, many years that you can't touch, you can't hug. We have those same situations in our families. And so now just trying to become very creative as to how you still ensure that people know that they're valued, they're important, and you care about them. And so we've had a lot of virtual celebrations this last week and for weeks to come. But just trying to plan for the future, so many unknowns. But talking to some individuals, you find that there are a few silver linings that come out of it, connections that you're making that otherwise you would not have, time with the family, even though it may be virtual, things you're giving attention to. And I just applaud the staff and Lori, her team. They have not missed a beat in these 23 weeks. And really good, inspiring, uplifting information in our packet that they sent out as pre-reads and that we'll go over today. Accomplishments that are happening, impacting individuals' lives when for some of them this may be the lowest point in their lives that they've had. And so gratifying work that the board, we have the opportunity to be a part of and to see these results. So I'm really excited about the impact that we're having on the lives of others. Since the last meeting, we had a virtual TOB meeting, and of course, the attention and the emphasis is on how do we continue to move forward in this virtual world? How do we continue to be there for those in need of jobs or need in childcare? And what is that going to look like in the future as well? You know, funding being there, we have some reports on that as well. We're so many days away from the election in November. Lots of buzz, lots of things happening there. Maybe not as much activity that impacts us as the way that we would like for it to. But most of the times when you're in an election year, some things tend to pause and happen after the election. So there's a lot of wait and see at this time. The only thing I say in a nonpartisan way is to please vote. Please cast your vote. Always important to do that. The other is that I am approaching the end of my term for the chair position on the board. And so what we will need to do is to convene a nomination or a committee to nominate the next chair and the next positions to be filled. So I'm happy to lead that committee, and so we will get balloting or get information out to you all probably in the next 2 weeks. I will say my time here, it seems like I've been here for longer than I have, and then yet it's been I guess, the last four years in this role. But it has been a very gratifying position to be in. Lots of things that we have aspired to do, and we've seen it come to fruition, and that is exciting. We yet have work to do and lots of opportunity to continue to move forward. So I look forward to being still on the board and contributing in any way that I can. And I want to say thank you to all of you, because it takes all of us. We cannot do it individually. So your insight, your perspective, the experience that you have, the backgrounds that you bring to this board is diverse. It makes us stronger, and it gives, hopefully, the staff what they're looking for from us as a board. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I know Lori does, and I know that the staff does as well. So with that, I am going to conclude my remarks, because I know we have a lot to cover today. We had the audit committee, and so we have reports for that. Right now, I'm going to ask for a declaration of conflict of interest.
Good morning.
And so to unmute and.
Good morning. This is Relinda, TWC conflict.
This is Kevin. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah. Anything related to TWC also?
Thank you.
This is Terry. Anything related to ResCare?
All right. Any others?
Anybody else? Okay.
All right. So I mentioned that we'll have a nominating committee. Next, Terry, would you like to report from the Finance Committee?
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. I will. Yes, a quick question is Kevin Smith, Crow? Yes, great. Okay, so Kevin, I will come to you in a moment. So wanted to everyone know that we got together about a week and a half ago virtually, and kind of went over. Kevin Smith provided us an overview, and Michelle Buss, who is audit senior manager on the engagement, provided us an overview of the 2019 annual audit. The synopsis is that it's an unmodified opinion, which is good. There are no question calls, which is good. However, there was one significant deficiency related to the implementation of a new accounting. Now, that always raises my eyebrows when there's an implementation of an accounting standard and there seems to be conflict in how that's implemented. That being said, I am comforted to report to the board that the issues associated with the implementation of the accounting standard, your management team did, in their review of the standard and their interpretation, took the most conservative approach. And without getting too much into the details of accounting, basically what and Kevin can give further clarification on this. But realistically, it's when we recognize, in this case, it was when we recognize money and report it in our financials. And what the board was doing was reporting the donation from, I believe it was the Walmart money, in total in the period in which it came in. And accounting standards actually don't want you to do that. They want you only to recognize a portion of it. It is money that is been donated but has no clawback feature to it. And I'll ask Kevin to provide a little more clarity on that. But just know that as we goes through his discussion about this, the board did probably a more conservative disclosure of this than was necessary, and provided more information to people than was required by the standard. And so with that, Kevin, if your mic is open, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about our audits and our approach and the one significant deficiency. Are we not able to bring Kevin?
Can you guys hear me now?
Ah, there you are. All right, all yours.
It wouldn't be a virtual call without the one person who can't find the mute button. So we can now begin. First and foremost, thank you for allowing me to join you guys this morning, actually in your homes as well today. So really appreciate the opportunity to interact with the board. First and foremost, I would agree with everything that Terry said. Unmodified opinion, very positive. No question cost or internal control deficiencies as it relates to the grants administration, very positive. A couple things I would take and highlight above and beyond what Terry shared. The entire audit was performed in this virtual world. It was in that 23 weeks that Laurie has referred to. So although the transactions would have occurred prior to December 31st, obviously your fiscal year end, the entire audit process was conducted virtually. Your management team responded so very well. An audit is never easy. It's a very iterative process. They moved very quickly to move more things to paperless than what they had already had. Although they were going in that direction, this accelerated it. I couldn't have been more pleased with management from that standpoint. With regards to the significant deficiency, and I am happy to talk and at any level that you guys have through your questions, but a couple key comments that I'd like to make there. One, significant interaction with your management team, and that would include Ashley and Laurie, to understand where Crow was coming from, what impact it had on their financial reporting, and how to address items such as this in the future. So I was really impressed with their responsiveness, and they're seeking first to understand where we were coming from and where they were coming from. Second, same with the audit committee. The board has a fiduciary responsibility, and they appoint, as it relates to the financial statements, that role to the fiduciary, or that fiduciary responsibility to the audit committee. We had extensive dialogue related to the conduct of the audit in this particular matter. I would agree with Terry. You know, I think it met the definition of a significant deficiency under auditing standards, but what I had shared with the audit committee is, you know, what I hated about it is that material weaknesses and significant deficiencies are kind of my silver bullet. It's my way to make a board stand up and say, you really have to focus upon something. And I don't want to play a silver bullet on this one. It was a one specific transaction. As Terry said, management took a more conservative approach. And also, in essence, it was really unique in that it's a transaction that was relatively material, out of the ordinary course of your business, was accepted right at year end. So if it had been accepted 6 months before, you would have probably spent it down and recognized everything about it. So it had this unusual characteristic of occurring right at year end without being able to obligate those funds and or spend those funds. So it really, in essence, they took the conservative approach. I don't believe that that management has to now go do something and build new internal controls or new policies and procedures. It was a one-time transaction, and I think both management and the audit committee has spent some sufficient time on it and addressed it, and there's not additional risk to the organization. So back to the other highlights. Again, an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. It means in reality two things. The financial statements are prepared in accordance with GAAP, and they're supported by the underlying books and records. The only audit adjustment that we identified is the one that we're talking about. I can issue an unmodified opinion and still have had to, booked 50 entries to correct what management has done throughout the year. That's not the case here. That was the only entry that we identified that we disagreed with. Everything else was supported by the books and records of the organization. As you guys know, your grant compliance is very extensive and had absolutely no issues with the internal control or the actual compliance as it relates to your major programs for both the federal and state programs. So all in all, particularly in the world that we're in, and for my team, it was their first start to finish virtual audit. Clearly, it was your team's first start to finish virtual audit. I couldn't be more pleased with both sides, and I want to thank Ashley and her team and Laurie and for the work that they performed, or the work that they provided to us. And if this hadn't come through as a positive audit, then I haven't done my job this morning. So please feel free to answer any question or ask any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Kevin?
Terry, this is Laurie. Could I just add Ashley, Rowena, Camilla, Masood, and Elizabeth do an amazing job in that department, and they have excelled during this time that we're not able to be in our office, but they have taken time to go in, process papers, make sure this audit happened. Very quickly, the detail of it, just to point out, this was a donation from Walmart to perform certain services, but it was not exactly a fee-for-service contract. The year preceding, we received additional money from Walmart, and it was handled differently. The audit, the procedures changed that rapidly. So I just kind of want to point out it's a donation. We showed it on the books, and we're not supposed to show it until the contract is complete under new standards. So just so everybody's at ease as to what was the finding, you don't have to read the report. Call us if you want to ask more questions, but I'm very satisfied with the team and very impressed with how well they keep up with everything. We have grown so dramatically in the last 2 years. Used to tell you we were a $120 million organization. We're probably now a $170 million organization. The child care money has just kept coming and coming. So we're on it. I think we are doing a fairly good job considering the expansion. And Ashley just recently hired a new accountant as well. So a little bandwidth in the department because we recognize that's so critical to keeping the public apprised and keeping the money safe. And thank you to the auditors. We can always debate it and walk away in agreement, and I think we've done that this time.
Very well said.
Does anyone else have any questions for the audit team? Not thank Kevin for his presentation this morning, and I think we'll move on to the next item, which looked at the committee meeting, and it was the ratification of the insurance policies. Our renewal here about this time, and so Ashley and her team have done substantive work around reviewing the costs associated with the annual insurance policy. The committee asked a lot of different questions about different costs associated, and we're very satisfied that we've done our diligence. And we're comfortable with the costs associated. But Ashley, do you want to provide any additional detail around costs or increase year over year?
No real additional detail. We were satisfied with the moderate increase in costs, and it appears reasonable based on market standards. You have a schedule of insurance that Lori has provided you all with in her email on Friday if you'd like to take a look. And if you have any further questions as you're going through that, we'd be happy to discuss.
Are there any questions at this time on the renewal of the insurance policies? So the recommendation of the audit committee, our recommendation is that the board authorize to accept the Finance Committee's recommendations to approve the annual audit for 2019, ratify the renewal management coverage of the insurance policies.
Right, can I get a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
I
Can I
second.
get a second?
This is Jason.
All right. All those in favor, if you unmute, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, any abstentions? All right, so moved. Thank you for the report, Ashley.
Yes,
Thank you. So next, let's go here.
it's me again.
I'm sorry?
It's me again for the financial report for the month.
Okay, thank you.
But can you guys hear me okay? I feel like I'm having some internet connection issues.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay,
Verizon.
I'm trying to share my screen with you all. But it doesn't seem to be working. So if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and flip to page 14 of your board packet and we can go over our expenditure report for the month of June. And while you're doing that, I just like to take a moment, and I know Lori already thanked the fiscal department, but I just like to thank my team. They really do stellar work in keeping us compliant with standards and just running a very smooth accounting department. All right, so we have blue lined a few grants for you that you have seen as part of the consent agenda today, or will be covered by Demetria during her discussion on contracts and agreements. The first item blue lined is the Youth Job Skills Grant on page 14. In May of this year, you authorized for us to obligate $218,000 in this grant to Wilkinson Center. However, as you can see on this line, the grant is for $500,000, so we have more money available to obligate. Wilkinson Center reevaluated the need for the purchase of technology and supportive services, and we have included an additional amount to obligate of $96,000 based on Wilkinson Center's needs in the consent agenda today. Page 15 highlights the COVID-19 response statewide funds. This is a $585,000 grant of which we have not obligated anything as of yet. Demetria will bring you a proposal of an amount to obligate to Equus, formerly ResCare, in a few moments for rapid response, online videos, and other enhanced services that can be paid out of this grant. Also on this page, you will notice that we have money available in our employment services grant. In April, we received additional money in this grant, reflected in the total budget on this page of $1.1 million. The additional money is specific for temporary staff. Demetria will also discuss staff's proposal to obligate this available money to Equus. Finally, on page 16, you'll notice some funds for Texas Rising Star Child Care Award and AEL Workforce Integration Initiative. We have obligated money for the Child Care Award, but we have $3,750 remaining available to obligate after reserving the board level administrative budget. We have included this amount in the consent agenda as available to include in Child Care Group's contract. We haven't obligated anything for the AEL $182,000 grant yet. So Demetria will bring that amount to you this morning in addition to our new normal AEL grant, which is not yet reflected on this expenditure report as the report relates to June expenditures and the new program year for the big AEL grant begins July 1st. If you have any questions about anything we've discussed in finance this morning, I'd be glad to answer. And if there are no questions, I'll let Ellen move on to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ashley. I assume there aren't any questions. Everybody was off mute. Okay, great. Thank you. Right, so we'll move now to the consent agenda. And this one is a review of May 20th and June 17th minutes. Are there any corrections, comments, any feedback on the consent agenda at all?
This is
All
Gilbert.
right.
I'll move for approval of consent agenda.
Thanks, Gilbert. Can I get a second?
Kelly, a second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, any abstentions? So moved. Thank you. All right. Next, we have contracts, purchases, endorsements, and external applications.
This is our
Okay.
means and expectations. Sorry, I kind of threw everybody off when I moved Ashley up in the agenda, but now we are back to normal means and expectations.
Okay, thank you.
And that's me. And good morning, everyone.
Hi,
My
Richard.
name is Richard Perez. I'm the research manager for the board. And on page 18 of the board packet, I will talk about the MPR, which stands for Monthly Performance Report. And this is a report from the Texas Workforce Commission on all of our contracted measures. It has 3 grading systems, plus P, which is doing great, MP, which is meeting performance, and negative or minus P, which is not meeting performance. So the first 2 performance measures, claimant reemployment within 10 weeks and employers receiving workforce assistance, those hadn't been available all year. One of them has to do with the new Work in Texas system. They're still working out the kinks on how to extract some of the employer performance. And the other one, I think they're reformatting that, the claimant within 10 weeks. But I'll talk about the choices measure next. We are not meeting that measure. That is the participation rate of our choices, our TANF participants in work-related activities. It's challenging in normal times, but in COVID, it makes it even a little bit more challenging. And we'll talk about that one in just a little bit in more detail. But it's just all the challenges and that have to do with COVID and participation and employer work sites. The average number of children served per day. This is the number of children in subsidized childcare, just an average per day, and we're doing well in that. The next group of measures, WIOA outcome measures, all of these are basically for performance metrics, and that's entered employment, and that is employment at the second quarter of exit, training credential attainment, whether somebody obtained a training credential, median earnings, what they're earning at the second quarter after exit, and retention, which is, are they still employed in the fourth quarter after exit? So we are meeting all of those, and that includes the youth. So I will go to the next page, which is the at-a-glance comparison, and that are all of the performance measures for all of the workforce boards summarized on one page. If you notice the choices column, only 3 boards are meeting that measure and 25 are not. So that just points out that it is definitely a challenging measure in times of COVID. The next page, on page 21, this is a briefing of a collaboration, pilot project with JFF, Jobs for the Future, Bright Hive, NAWB, National Association of Workforce Boards, and Google. And it's Outcomes for Opportunity Initiative. And basically what that is like I was saying, it's a pilot project. We're one of 5 sites that were chosen. And it's reviewing data on educational programs in our area and how they can take a deeper dive on employment and some of the measures and just compare those with the other pilot sites. That's basically what it is. We haven't signed the agreement yet, but we think it's going to be a very good project. Maybe allow us to learn some different things about our training providers and some of the performance measures around that. The next page, on page 22 and 23, those are summaries of the unemployment insurance claims. And I got to give credit to Mario on our staff. He did a great job coming up with the map and all the other graphs. So the first map is just a visual representation of where the unemployment insurance claimants are in Dallas County. The higher or the deeper the color, the bigger the concentration in that area. Also the top 10 occupations, and just a weekly graphical representation of the number of claims by week, as well as the educational attainment. And one thing I'll point out at the top, 255,701 initial claims filed since the beginning of March. And just an idea of how many people are still on unemployment insurance. There's another statistic from a different report, which is the number of continued claims from month to month. And the most recent information for Dallas County was for June, but that number was 92,587 continued claims for June. And that compares to 10,032 in June 2019. So it is a big number, but everyone that did file an initial claim doesn't necessarily mean they're still on unemployment insurance. And there's just some more breakouts on age and gender and race on the unemployment population. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of those 3 groupings that we did: performance, the new initiative with Jobs for the Future, or anything on employment insurance.
Richard, that's a great job. I just want to bring out something that we have to concentrate on. The largest portion of people still remaining unemployed or unemployed through the course of these 23 weeks. The majority is women, only slightly at 52%. The majority are African-American at this point, which it was Hispanic at another point in time. And that was the major impact initially, if you'll notice on the larger ethnicity chart. And by and large, these people are under the age of 34. The majority are our young workers. They were in service industry, working our restaurants, serving your tables, serving the bars. We have got to replace these people into the workforce. They are our future workforce. And if we don't do something to cultivate, it's not just upskilling, it's cultivate their interest in other opportunities. So we're going to be brainstorming. Richard is working with the chamber and the college system right now, looking at what jobs are available. How could we upskill people, retrain people to go into these jobs? You lead a horse to water. We have the training money, we have the curriculum, but people have to want this. They have to want this as their future opportunity. And I think it's going to become a selling issue in our community for young adults to believe this is their future. And a lot of them have come around and said, I don't want to be laid off again. I don't want to go back to service work. It's dangerous. I don't want to be talking to the customers. I want a job I can do from home. So if any of you have great ideas, maybe we'll even have a task force of the board to join Richard and the data people and talk about where can we direct this absolutely necessary group of workers in our community who aren't going to just automatically return to their prior job. Thanks again, Richard.
Certainly.
Good morning. I'm Demetria Robinson, Vice President of Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas. It is my pleasure to present to you this morning the contract items beginning on page 24 through 28. We are requesting ratification of contract amendments to our existing service providers with available funds corresponding to Ashley's financial analysis. First item, the program year for adult education and literacy is July 1st through June 30th. It's hard to believe that we are now entering into our 7th year of when we first were awarded this program. And at one time, we actually considered giving the program up. Although we have had many challenges, there were just as many opportunities presented as well. With strong partnerships and good leaders, our consortium has managed to overcome the many struggles. Each year we were faced with a different challenge, and this year has not been an exception. I'm pleased to say I'm glad we stuck with it. During this pandemic, each of our consortium partners transitioned all of their existing face-to-face classes to a virtual platform to maintain student engagement and participation. To continue these efforts and to meet the grant requirements, we are requesting to add the new program year funding as well as new grant funds received for workforce integration initiatives to support case management, follow-up services, and enhanced services to our existing AEL programs. As presented in the chart, staffers request an amendments to each of the AEL consortium partners with the respective funding amounts. Our existing partners is Dallas College, formerly Dallas County Community College, Irving ISD, Richardson ISD, Wilkinson Center, and Equus Workforce Solutions, formerly Res Care Workforce Services. We have 2 entities that have now changed their name, so we'll get used to calling the college Dallas College and Res Care Equus. Our program year performance targets from TWC has not been received for AEL at this time, but we will be negotiating once we get those performance targets. Any questions on the AEL piece of, okay, I will move on to the next item. Next is childcare group. We're requesting an amendment to the existing contract for management and operations of the Child Care Subsidy Program through September 30th as follows. $65,541 in operations to cover additional costs to get us through September. $1,260,000 in Child Care Subsidy discretionary funds for the 25% enhancement reimbursement rates for providers, and $680,000 in the CARES Act funds from the City of Dallas for providers as indicated in the chart. The Texas North Cares, Dallas County, and the City of Irving funding was presented in May and June. These projects are currently available for child care providers to apply through the application process on Child Care Group's website. We are very excited and thankful for the opportunity to award these micro grants to child care providers in Dallas County. We know the hardships that they are facing and during this time, and these funds are to assist them in their operational costs. There has been a total of 139 applications received and 57 have been awarded thus far. CCG Child Care Group is still receiving and processing applications on a first come, first served basis until funds have been exhausted. The City of Irving subsidized child care payments for parents, the $750,000 noted in the chart, is scheduled to be released at the end of this month. And this will assist parents in child care subsidy as they get prepared to go back to work. And we're currently working with the City of Dallas for their release date. And that was just passed by the council last week. So all in all, we have received $2.3 million of external child care assistance funding to provide micro grants to our child care providers in Dallas County.
Dee, if I can just interrupt you for a minute.
Sure.
This is a miraculous occurrence. I don't know that the board understands how hard you've had to work to make these things real, how hard Child Care Group has worked to make the application process something we can all hang our hat on. CARES money is definitely treacherous money. I think we all agree that you've got to watch every issue. The county started the ball rolling, and North Texas Cares, we can't thank, the donors have been amazing. But to see the city of Dallas put this in the forefront, to recognize that childcare, we can't put people back to work without childcare. And we have a serious problem right now. Some of the rules that we're working with, if the school is open, we can't take a school-age child and pay for their care all day. If the school is not open, there's circumstances where we can. It's very difficult. Kudos to Child Care Group. They have done an amazing job, but also to Dee and her staff. This is new ground for all of us, but I'm very, very happy we were able to make the point that these are small business owners and these are people who do not bank well. They don't have the connections for the loans. However, we are coordinating everything with the county and the city. If they did get a loan, then they won't get this money. This money is not a duplication. It's for those who were not able to take advantage of other government CARES Act money. It's been amazing. It went through city council with no one raised an issue. Nobody asked a question. I think we finally hit a point. Susan Hoff knows what I mean, when we can say childcare and people say how much, as opposed to what about childcare? We've come a long way. So just wanted to point that out. Thanks, Dee.
Thank you. Moving on to page 25. Staff is requesting ratification of contract amendment to Equus Workforce Solutions, formerly Rest Care Workforce Services, Workforce Center existing contract, adding additional funds received from TWC to increase capacity and enhance virtual services to customers as follows. $200,000 in employment services funds for temporary staff, as Ashley mentioned, and $107,533 in COVID-19 response statewide funds for rapid response staff, online videos, and other enhanced services. Both funding streams will be an effective date commensurate with the original grants. Lastly, with respect to the circumstances and TWC's confirmation that the incentive measures are a local matter, staff requests an amendment to Equus existing incentive matrix approved by the board in January of 2020. Due to the pandemic and the circumstances beyond our control, performance was interrupted, converted to virtual services, and state requirements for customers were waived, like the job search requirement. The 2020 board performance has not been revised by TWC, but TWC continues to enhance that February was our last normal month of measuring statewide systems. The amendment includes, and I'll read these as presented on page 25 because it's so detailed. Removing claimant reemployment within 10 weeks and employer workforce assistance due to the lack of TWC data from the Work in Texas system, and redistribute those risks to the remaining measures. Amend the cumulative period year-end date from September 2020 to February 2020 for all measures. Noting the contractor only had the opportunity to perform for 5 months on two 12-month cumulative measures, amending the definition of met the target from 95% to 90% for choices full rate, all family, and non-custodial parents. And amending the incentive target from within 5% to within 10% of target to earn 100% of the incentive percentage of risk of all performance measures. It's a mouthful, but it is very necessary. The last column in the chart, revised percentage at risk, represents the redistributed risk to the remaining measures. We've bolded those numbers where we've taken the 8% for the two measures of the claimant reemployment within 10 weeks and employer workforce assistance measures and distribute them among the remaining ones. And pages 26 and 27 is the February 2020 performance report that we're referencing and basing the performance of our last normal month. We commend Equus for exemplary service to customers and their assistance in moving all services home. Are there any questions? And I'll ask Lori to add any additional comments to this. This is a lot of information. We've worked really closely with ResCare and TWC trying to determine what's best and what's fair at this particular time.
Thank you, Demetria. I think you've touched on the fairness. We had a long conversation with the performance people at the state. There really are no shortcuts this year. If we believed that Equus, ResCare was not doing a fine job, we would be telling you that, as you know us. I know they have done their best. The problem has been that as of March, the Department of Human Services stopped requiring the Choices customer to look for work. And that makes complete sense. But if they are not required to look for work, that's why you've got 25 out of 28 boards not meeting the measure. It does no good to say, oh, well, that's such an issue. So, I mean, 95% is usually our goal. Make 95% of the measure. We want you in that high column. We're saying 90% of the measure at this point, and they skate by on that one. But they've done their best. I got to thank Tara Nunn, Lisa Boyd, and the entire team at ResCare. It's been, as we all know, unique experience. But to be able to get everyone safely home, it took about 2 to 3 weeks. We still have, I don't know how many cases Tara has reported of people trying to work in the offices, people coming together. There would be no easy way to bring people back in for in-person services. I think we're going to try curbside next. But we have continued virtual services, and there are case notes. Every person on Choices, which is the welfare program, is contacted. They are given assistance for anything they may need. So we know it isn't the best showing, but we believe it is fair, and we would seek your support. But I would like you to ask questions. I know we've gone through a lot of material at this point. There was one more thing in Dee's report, which is the NCP, the non-custodial parent. That's where we work with the courts. For a time, their staff was actually removed from the courts. There were no in-person court attendance. Now there is. And that measure, again, is that 90 plus, the percentage being 90%. So all of that is an action item on page 28. But please take a moment. We'll take a breath and let you think about what you'd like to ask. Anyone?
Yeah, Lori, this is Alan. So first of all, just thanks to, again, to the staff and just all the tremendous work, especially during this crazy time. Just going to the childcare section, we're obviously in a lot of moving parts happening in childcare. We've talked during this meeting about how this has become an increasing part of our budget. We've talked about during this meeting how there's different rule changes. We talked about during this meeting how the community has sort of now really recognized the unbelievable link between childcare and the future of workforce. So my strong request is that we get a next childcare committee meeting on the books. This should not be something that's falling off during this critical time. So I'll certainly circle back with the staff and with Susan and with everybody. But I just think that we should be having kind of deeper dives on this. But everything the staff's doing is tremendous, and really appreciate the hard work. Just want to make sure that we're doing our part to really think through this at a deep level. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alan, and thank you, Demetria, and the rest of the staff, and Child Care and Res Care. I mean, these are, you don't need me to tell you, these are incredibly unusual and challenging times. Yes, Alan, we can definitely get the child care meetings recalendared. We had pushed pause on those just in terms of the time, but I can go and I'll work with Lori and staff to get those back scheduled again. I know that we have meeting requirements and that we, and I will need some guidance from staff, Lori, on how to do those, because I know that they need to be posted and open to the public if necessary. So I'll need your help with that.
Absolutely. And truly, that was the next thing on Demetria and I's calendar. Bob Mong was an integral part of that committee. We need to replace Bob. So the other comment would be, would anyone like to serve? Right now it's Susan and Alan and Jason and Carter. Would anyone else on the board who's on the call this morning like to volunteer for the child care task force?
I'd be happy to volunteer.
Stephanie, oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Hey, Laurie, this is Michelle and Demetria. Thank you all so very much. I just have a quick question. As we look at the child care assistance contract, it looks like the funding goes through September the 30th. As everyone is looking at new rounds of stimulus type funding, would there be, or is there any consideration that there will be another round of sub grants that would be able to support, given that we may be in this environment or anticipate being in this environment for a while?
That's a really good question. The money that this is coming from expires on December 30th. Yeah, this is the end of the CARES money, and they needed us to spend it quickly. I will say that's one of the motivations for the county initially. Can you get this money out? So it would take congressional action for a new grant. And then we're going to have conversations about, does anybody get to double dip? The main thing we would love to see is the $600 subsidy to unemployed. It doesn't have to be that big, but we need to guarantee subsidy to keep these people buoyant, because a lot of the centers are laying off workers. They don't have the number of kids. The state has done so much to keep them going and pay for empty seats during the pandemic. But you're right, it's unsustainable on the long haul, and the money is not there for it. So this is all very temporary. We could be reporting very dramatically different statistics in October, and that's unfortunate. But yeah, we've I don't know if Dee has it at her fingertips. How many centers, Dee, would you say have already closed, more than temporary closure, actually not available now?
I don't have the number because it's changing every day. Some of them are temporary, and then they're extending longer. I know we've submitted at least 8 centers to TWC that have closed due to a circumstance in their center, and have closed beyond the 2-week period that we would pay. And TWC has handled those on a case-by-case basis, and all except one case have been approved beyond the 2-week period where we could pay for their closure. But as far as total closures, I don't have that number.
Lori, I had one question. Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, did I interrupt you?
No, that was great.
Okay. So Lori, and Demetria, have all of the CARES Act dollars that have come to the state for childcare been distributed to the local workforce boards, or is there any additional money still at the state level waiting to be distributed?
I believe there is money to be distributed tomorrow. There's additional action at the commission meeting, so we are going to be watching. They de-ob some money from us, from the bigger boards. There's a few boards that are about run out of money to do what the state asked us to do, because we are paying, or we did through May, cost for non-service. We are just keeping the money going to keep the centers open. This is going to be a networking issue. We're not going to have the capacity, and people are not going to trust larger centers. There's going to be another issue. People want pods. We've seen that. They want a lot of neighborhood podding. So I think it's a right time for in-home care. Small licensed homes will probably become very popular as opposed to mega centers. But we really don't see that blossoming, and it may not be licensed. It may not be it's taking us backwards, Susan, is my fear.
Yeah.
We'll get back to a place where people are just leaving self-arranged care, and we'll have to see what we can do to fortify that with quality.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Lori, this is Ken Malcolmson. I didn't want my friend Stephanie Knight to upstage me, so I'll volunteer to participate on this group as well.
Thank you, Ken.
Peer pressure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
That is going to make it a very formidable group. Thank you guys for coming on board. We appreciate it.
Hey, Lori, on the work choices issue, sorry to go off script here, but I know these are the three that have exceeded expectations or met performance expectations. They're smaller and probably don't have statistical validity, but is there anything that we can glean from them in terms of, from a best practice perspective, on how they're meeting their performance objectives in that work choices arena?
Very happy to check on that, Ken. I hadn't thought of that. I do have a meeting this afternoon at 4 with my colleagues, and I'll ask the question. I think where we're seeing more of a normal course is where there are small outbreaks of COVID, small viral loads, so that they have not closed down to the extent that a metro area closes. And we're also seeing small case loads. So they've only got so many people on welfare, and it becomes more manageable. We took a big hit when things started shutting down. A lot of the customers, the Choices customers, were employed at CVS. We have a great relationship, but the last thing CVS wanted in this was extra help that wasn't accountable to the corporation. So they just gutted the program. Everybody was sent home.
Yeah, it appears there's a direct correlation to density, and so certainly understand that. And I'm sorry that I'm way behind here, but I wanted to comment on a couple of things that Richard talked about, some numbers. I always find his reports fascinating, and I think they're always well done, especially his charts that he provides us. But having been on at least a half a dozen calls with Rob Kaplan over the last couple of weeks, what's painfully evident, and nothing new to anybody on this call, is that there's this direct correlation between impact of the pandemic and educational attainment. And as Rob often states, is that there's 46 million workers in the United States that have a high school degree or less, and they've been disproportionately affected, obviously, by the virus, which is interesting because if you compare it to the Great Recession of 2008, all groups were affected then. Now there's if you think about it, if you have a college degree or higher, there's profoundly less impacted. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and that combined with this historically low worker mobility situation that we're dealing with right now, that he often talks about the importance of upskilling and reskilling, and it's a profoundly local issue, and that's obviously right in our wheelhouse. But the question, and this is a long roundabout way to get to, he was complimentary of what's happening in Dallas. thank you very much. But also more complimentary of what's happening in Houston right now, particularly with this Greater Houston Partnership Upskill Houston program. Are we collaborating with them? Are we working with them and trying to figure out ways to capitalize on the things that are happening in Houston right now?
Great question. Houston has constantly been an influence, I believe, and vice versa on Commit. Houston is looking to us for Dallas Promise, the free college for 2 years. Dallas is looking to Houston. I work directly with my colleague there. He's one of my best friends. Their partnership exceeds anything we've had in the Dallas market. It just is business led. It's larger. And they are trying to do things that we haven't yet attempted, I think, as a community. I'm hopeful that Dallas Thrives, the new initiative, will take on. But I got to tell you guys, there are still other initiatives. The problem in Dallas is people will not buy into one focused initiative. And I thought Thrive was going to be it until I get a shipment of, documents from the city that the new person in economic development has their own plan. We really do need to learn to work, I think, as that partnership works and coalesce around one or two big ideas. And upskilling, reskilling that's the meat. If you realize we went after the retail pays that Lynn manages for us, we're now 3 years in because we recognized we have to upskill our grocery workers. Boy, did we not realize where retail and grocery was going to go in 2 years. We couldn't have imagined this, but we knew that the mobility was lacking and people cannot live on that salary forever. And I think it again, bringing the horse to water, we have got to convince these young workers that there is a better route for them. And we've got to provide the training. The state has taken efforts to provide a statewide platform through metrics. And they are giving what they're calling enhancements, not training, because the state doesn't get in the business of direct training, but they're giving enhancement activity free of charge to anyone who's an unemployed claimant. Only problem with that is not very directed, and we're not doing the counseling to back that up and the labor data. We're just letting people pick and choose and study online. And the persistence of online study is questionable. We've seen it in what we monitor and what we're actually supporting. We've really got to crack down and have a bigger effort. I'm so glad you brought up the partnership because it really resonates with every web call I've had in the last 2 weeks of people saying, we've got to do it. We've got to do it. Well, its time has come and we've got to find the resources and the will and then help direct people to employers that will hire them. Thank you for that.
Lori, this is Kelly. I couldn't agree more on your Dallas Thrives comment. It's frustrating to think that you think you have one direction, everyone's heading in the same direction, and then all of a sudden you see 2 or 3 other splinter groups. So it's hard to organize kind of your corporate partners around getting excited about this, and then they say, well, wait, what about the city? What about this? What about that? So it's frustrating, but I'm hoping that we continue to gain traction on Dallas Thrives for sure.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Carrie has put herself on the front page saying, please do this, do this. Chase is involved, everyone that we thought needed to be at the table, and you still have a little something hanging off the edge. But I think in time, maybe we can still gather people around product then. They'll see the proof. I work the Houston market. There's nothing better there than what we've got here. In fact, we're smaller, we're more cohesive. It's just getting folks to drop the who gets credit or the it's mine, not yours. Enough of this. It has to be Dallas, everybody in, and we've got to make this work. Thanks. Any other?
Great discussion.
Was there anything else about Richard's presentation on the Google project? Because I'm very proud of his work in that, getting Google and National Association work saying, come on, Dallas, be one of the 5 in the nation. That's a very big opportunity. Not that much in the money, but it is something to be a part of making better decisions based on data. Alan, you've taught us well. is the driver, but I'm very pleased with that. Was there any questions of Richard as to what we'll be working on or what will be shared? We just had a call together.
Did we lose you, Lori? I don't see you or hear you.
Yeah, you lost her. She'll probably come back.
Okay. Great discussion. And were there any other questions for Richard or thoughts on his presentation? Thank you, Richard and Dee, for the outstanding report. Board, great discussions. Stephanie and Ken, thank you for joining the Child Care Committee. And, you know, my only thoughts were, as you all were discussing this and talking about what to do moving forward, I think many organizations are thinking we won't go back to what was normal totally. It will look different. And so I didn't know if there are any task force coming together or thoughts on agendas to start to creatively think about the possibilities of what this new normal will look like on the other side of the pandemic. And so I think about things like we did not have the TSA in airports before 9/11. You went right to the gate and you were back and forth and you got to see your loved ones off right at the plane. Today you don't. And so when we look at the TSA today, many of us don't remember it not being there. This has become the new normal. It's a part of how we travel. So I think about what are going to be the things that will look different that will possibly impact our metrics. I mean, we're meeting them today, the majority of them, in this current environment that we're in. But if the thinking is that we go to podding with childcare in the future, if we start to look at that differently, should we as a board, along with others, we can't do it alone, start to think about or driving the thought process of thinking and planning differently for that future. All right, so next, do we want to have a recommendation for the board ratification of amendment for the adult education and literacy partners, the Irving School District, Richardson, and the Wilkinson Center Child Care Group, if I could get a motion to accept their recommendations and the amendments to the existing contract.
Stephanie.
This is
Thank
Susan.
you, Stephanie. If I could get a second.
I'll get a second. This is Susan.
Susan. Thank you, Susan. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, any abstention?
Abstain.
All right, that's Terry. Any others? All right, so moved. Next, Dee, were you coming back on to?
No, it'll be Connie next.
Oh, Connie.
me.
Okay. Thank you, Connie.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm presenting policies for your review and approval, which include the child care transfer policy. And this follows TWC guidance, WD letter 07-2021. As has been discussed, COVID-19 has impacted families and child care programs. And according to the WD letter, boards may amend their local policy to require a waiting period for child care, except for cases in which the child's safety may be in jeopardy. Requiring a 2-week period before ending care at a facility aligns with common private pay practices. During this waiting period, the child's referral as the original provider shall continue unless the parent requires a suspension. extenuating circumstances that require an immediate transfer will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. And this applies to all transfers, not just COVID. And of course, the contractor will be required to document this transfer within TWIST, and the counselor knows. The second policy is amending our existing support services policy. Currently, we have a policy which provides resources and services to allow a customer to go on to work or to go to training, which includes transportation assistance and other work-related expenses. We're modifying this policy to include technology as well as Wi-Fi, and this will assist some of our customers who are lacking those to participate in work or training. We also cover other supplies such as interview clothing, and those support services that we can't cover, we refer to our external community agencies. So those are the two policies I'm covering today. If anybody have any questions regarding those. So what we're asking for is board authorization to approve the policies as presented.
Are there any questions, comments, or thoughts? Thank you, Connie. So can I get a motion to approve the policies as presented?
This is Kelly, so moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ken. Ken, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved. Thank you. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you. Thank you. The next item that I'm covering is for procurement. Child care service procurement was released on July 14th with responses due back August 11th. We received one response from Child Care Group. With the procurement, we issued it virtually, and this was kind of a unique process for us, but we posted it in the Dallas Morning News for outreach, as well as the Child Care Network and on our website. We held a virtual bidders conference to allow all bidders to ask questions. Q&A was also posted on our website, as well as supplemental information. The proposal that we received from Child Care Group was evaluated by a team of evaluators, and the score was 77 out of 100. Child Care Group requested a budget of $5.8 million. However, this amount exceeded our budget of administration and operations. We will negotiate an affordable final sum with reviewers had several questions, and we can resolve those during contract negotiations. Child Care Group has been an exemplary contractor, and they are a champion for the child care industry. So we're recommending to negotiate with Child Care Group to execute a fiscal year contract beginning October 1, with the final contract amount ratified in September. If there's any questions, I can take those.
Yeah, could you just provide a little bit more detail on the difference between what they're asking for and what you've allocated? Like, what are the specific cost buckets that they feel like they need more in order to execute for?
What we did see increases on is staffing, and some of their indirect costs were a bit higher from previous years. So those are some of the items that we need to get with Child Care Group to better understand how they're staffing. And there was some questions about their conversion to virtual services. So all of this will be discussed during contract negotiations with Child Care Group.
Yeah, I guess I understand that. I'd love at some point, and I'm gonna, so obviously I support the recommendation, right? Like, you should absolutely negotiate and understand it. I just love to understand a little bit more as to what, with the additional staffing that they're asking for, what Child Care Group believes they can accomplish. So, I mean, I just want childcare in general to be a little bit more outcomes focused instead of compliance focused in general, and for all of the asks of dollars, especially since Childcare Group is the largest vendor for us to be able to at least articulate or have conversations around what is it that the dollars are actually buying over the course of the contract, and what are the goals that Childcare Group is setting and pushing to try to drive the region forward. So that doesn't have to happen right now, but that's kind of where the inquiry is pushing, and would love to be able to understand that after the contract's negotiated, like sort of what their goals are, and you know, that way we can sort of drive alignment with the board. Thanks so much.
Sure.
And Connie, I'm wondering if these increases are COVID related for safety purposes.
Well, and it very well could be. We just need to discuss this more with Childcare Group during the contract negotiations.
Stephanie, for the most part, the things that we've done have covered those costs under this year. So remember, this is an October 1 going forward. And I think Alan's questions are probably similar to the reviewers' questions. I was not one of the reviewers, but what we saw was it's almost as though we opened an avenue to more operations costs than usual. Dallas is one of the most cost-efficient operations in the state. No one will disagree with that. But there are now 4 boards. Childcare Group has expanded. They're doing Southeast Texas, which they've done, and the Heart of Texas. There's 3 of us. And I guess we would expect an efficiency on the overhead as opposed to an expansion. And so we're wondering how much of it is necessary, or is it simply, yes, you've held us down for so long, we've been so frugal, and we need a little more. So I think they may have real justifiable costs that we've never met or have been able to help them, if it's refresh, if it's updating their systems and such. But we want to make sure that cost is shared with the other boards that are now utilizing their services. Also, the quality money is only marginally in this. There will be a subsequent procurement on quality. And I think quality is only 2% of the funds, but it's so critical to use those dollars wisely. So we will come back to the committee with more of this information, and those meetings will be published, as Susan said, very much like the audit committee was. We'll make sure all of you on the board, if you have a minute to pop in, whether you serve on the committee or not, you can hear more detailed information about this contract. It is our largest contract. There is significant risk involved in this contract, and this is a procurement that only gets conducted every 4 years. Competition is very lean. You have to realize this. Childcare Group is 117 years old. In our community about the care and feeding of our children. And they have done amazing work during the COVID crisis in getting PPP to the equipment, PPE to the childcare providers, getting them cleaning supplies, training them. Rhonda hosts a coffee chat every Thursday with the providers who need reinforcement. They need to talk to someone. Cannot say enough about what they do. I think we're now into the fine details of what does it cost to do what they do, and how much of it is necessary October 1 to September 30th next year. That can this procurement be year. That was not me. I'm not really sure what that was. Hopefully you can hear me, and that was answering a few more questions about this. Thank you all so much for your attention to detail. It's appreciated, and that's how the team is viewing it as well. More questions, please.
No, Laura, I'll make one last comment. This is Alan. So thanks so much. I mean, I agree with you. I would love to know more on the 2% on quality, because that's probably what's most fungible. But more than anything, I think the point I'd just sort of make is this is now close to 65, 70% of the overall budget childcare. So if there's one area for us to really understand how the finances are working or being used just from a general oversight, not to impose, not to play management or anything like that. This is the contract among all to really understand as a board, just given our duty on that. So that's the spirit with which this is going out.
We completely understand and appreciate. Believe me, we do.
Connie, this is Carter. I would just go along with what Alan stated. You mentioned the score was 77, I think. And when I was in school, that was a high mark for me. But regarding childcare, I think we all want to strive for 100. So can you give us some measure of what they've done in the past? Is 77 normal? Is that a Carter A, or is that state that there's deficiencies there?
If Connie's not going to, let me jump in a little bit because this is Susan. I have some history with over the years with Child Care Group and also with the board. And what I would say is, at least in my time period, in the the high 70s was a good score. What my experience has been, and watching the board, is that they are incredibly meticulous in terms of their the evaluators, in terms of looking at the proposals. And so, I actually would be very surprised if someone had 100 or even in the 90s. I think that they are cautious and they, again, are meticulous in their evaluation. And so, again, I think Child Care Group definitely put a wonderful proposal forward, I'm sure, but I would not expect anybody to be getting in the hundreds or up to 100. So I don't know, Connie, if you've got anything to add to that.
I'll jump in. Susan is very correct. The detail is necessary. And I will say, for all of their attributes, Child Care Group has had an ongoing problem with managing procurement. And there was an incident in the last year. So monitoring is, our monitors are very detailed people. We do not have anything that truly affects the care of the children, the management of the workforce, or the centers, getting reimbursement. Those systems work very well, but all systems have to work well, because we are graded on all systems. And compliance is a huge issue in government money, and we want to make sure this board is not exposed. So we draw attention in this process to those things that we know have been significant concern in the administration. And that's why I think it's safe to talk about the overhead. It's safe to talk about keeping personnel that will manage these systems and getting some good years behind them about this. So Susan, you're spot on.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. I think we need a recommendation to negotiate with Child Care Group. And Lori, with them being the only bid, we feel confident that we'll be able to get an agreement.
Yes, ma'am. I think we have been effective in the past. We can come to agreement. We can find our way. And we just want to make sure they understand the concerns. Being the only one doesn't mean it's the only option, but we'd rather not reprocure. They are phenomenal in the care. They are phenomenal. It's just understanding the cost price analysis. Do we believe that is necessary? And what else could we do to fortify their internal systems? Those would be the most important issues. But yes, this is good to go. Now, because it was one, Connie really belabored the issue of it was published, it was circulated, it was a clean procurement, but we will have to connect with the state since there was only one applicant.
Okay.
But we want the board's blessing to move ahead and make sure that this satisfies our local needs.
Okay, great. All right, if I can get a motion to accept them continuing to negotiate with Child Care Group.
So moved. This is Susan.
Thank you, Susan. Can I get a second?
I second Jason.
Thank you, Jason. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, so moved. Next, Lori, I think we're ready for, we don't have any closed session today. President's briefing.
Just real quickly, following that motion, there is a monitoring report or an update for you, a chart. This has to do with our local monitoring efforts. Those have been desk reviews. We've had very little in person, but I think we're getting the job done, much as our auditors mentioned. It's kind of hard to look at everything other than a desk review right now, but they're still coming along. So you see 1 or 2 pending reports and some reports that have been wrapped up. The state came out to visit us. Our last monitoring visit was last November, and we just got the report. So it was issued in June, but we got it. We're showing it to the board. It's important. We did not have major issues. In fact, we got a clean report. On the second page, we were showing you a special review. A special review was conducted of a project that's about $1.7 million in our accounts. And this was supplemental nutrition, the old food stamp program. It's called SNAP. This was, we have a serious problem, and the serious problem is data entry. There were no question costs. I don't mean to belittle it, but oh my goodness, if you'd have seen the level of detail in this, it would not make you happy. Pull files and read every one of them, and then go back and forth correcting, was the date accurate? Did we sanction people fast enough for non-compliance? Non-compliance in this program would be that we call you up and say, we have a job for you. We see you lost your job. If you're on food, and we didn't maybe do that according to Hoyle. So it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. We did a corrective action plan. It's on page 33. ResCare was a very strong participant in this, Equus. Yes, they know they need to get their data entry up to par, and we need to sanction people more quickly than we were doing it. This was all pre-COVID, but the rules are not going to get any easier. We have seen a crackdown from the regional offices at the different federal agencies on a lot of data entry, data integrity. I think I'm seeing more than I have seen. And our regional office in Dallas, I'm very close to those folks, but they have definitely taken a little turn lately to a more rigorous review of the state, TWC. And so all things will trickle down to the local boards, and we will be doing more review at this level, which again, it's not outcome based, Alan. I wish it was. Was it about doing the right thing, or is it about reporting it on an exact calendar? And, you know, we run this situation in just about every government program. Very little of the programming is ever about pure outcome. It's a whole lot about compliance. So we'll keep at it. We'll get it right eventually. The last parts for me, and I'll do the updates pretty quickly because, oh my goodness, it's 9:09. I need to rush us. COVID updates. We are not in our centers except on an as-need basis. Figured out how to safely engage our customers, even though we're prepared. We have all the PPE. We have the plexiglass shields up. We've ordered shields for face shields and all the masks. But our customers require use of computer, and we still haven't figured out how to do that. We've thought of curbside. We've thought of we are amping up our Wi-Fi in our center so people without Wi-Fi can come to our parking lots and plug in. This is a state endeavor. We're trying to do everything we can to connect people because truthfully, the people most in need who do not have connectivity are shut out during a time of COVID. So we need to think about that in our community. I think that is the one thing, the takeaway that I'm seeing. We're all interested in the unemployed. Absolutely. This is our workforce. These are the people who had a job at the beginning of 2020. They need to have a job now. But what about everybody who was already living in poverty, was already unable to support themselves? Do they have Wi-Fi? Do they have a phone that can connect them to at least our telephones to seek help, to find services? This is a problem. So as well as we think things can thrive and work in a virtual society, a virtual workforce, we really need to cure that problem. And I know the Fed is looking at it. I know that companies are looking at it. Connecting all of Dallas is critical. We're seeing a decline in people's lifestyles. And in some cases, there was no room for decline. I told the committee and I've told all of us different sad stories about Redbird Mall and our facility there. I do want to give you a report that Peter Brodsky is very responsive. We are working directly, he and I. He understands the board's concern more than you know. I've seen critical changes. There was a team put on 24/7 over the weekend to monitor the rains. Everything that had been done seems to have held. So there was no more groundwater, no more roof leakage. They are marking all of our parking places for Workforce Solutions because now they're beginning Parkland construction and they know that there will be disruption. I think we have their full attention. They are going to change out the carpet. Anything that Alex is asking at this point as our property manager is pretty much being addressed. There's also a check being written to us for all of our replacement costs. We're in that period now of let's see if it gets better. And I'm pretty assured that Peter's doing the best he can do now. I just hope that his contractors do not disappoint. One of the things that will be beyond his control when Parkland begins, it will not be internal construction, will not be under his direction. Parkland is bringing on their own construction. So we may have a little bit of a transition problem there. Hopefully we'll be back in the offices more consistently while they're doing that work. And they understand. They've been given a real blessing by us not needing our offices there, not trying to hold big events, because I think it would have been impossible with all of the disruption of no heat, leaking ceiling, leaking floor. But maybe we are there and it has finally been secured. We had one good long rainstorm and we're all very hopeful. If you have more questions on that, don't hesitate. Special events, thank you to Bill O'Dwyer and to Gilbert for connecting us to Francois, who is the president out at the state fair. There is a Big Tex job fair that occurs every year to put people to work in the fair. Instead, there's going to be a virtual event hosted by Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas to help 6,000 people who would normally work at the fair to find alternative employment, seasonal employment, because that's what they're used to. The sadness is I don't know that we can equal the during that period. Apparently, there are people who have been working the fair for many, many years, and that is their major employment and earnings of the year, is that period of time in South Dallas when it's 24/7 kind of work, but they make a lot of money. In this situation, do everything we can to find them good employment that will last in a similar period. We're connecting it to the North Texas Giving Day. And one of our campaigns will be, please donate jobs. Please help us get these people employed. Lots of people needing their normal state fair work need another kind of job right now. Even if it's a temporary job, we would love to secure employment for them. So stay tuned on that. That will be late September to kind of coincide with the opening of the fair. Other discussion, Ellen, I would say I'm out, but you've seen a multitude of activity going on this month. I'm glad we're meeting every month. We skipped July. But just a note of thanks to Ellen. She's been amazing. She's probably set the chair now longer. She took over to complete a term for 2 additional presidents. Kathy left, Julie left. If you've been on the board a while, they left in the same year. And Ellen was the treasurer, and suddenly she found herself as the president, as the chair. She's like, okay, let's do this. And she's done an amazing job for 4 years, and we will do that. And Gilbert, she's throwing you out of the past chair's job, apparently.
Yeah, I've been the past chair for a long time because all the other chairs seem to leave. So, Ellen, you got to stay. You got to stay around.
Oh, no. I'll do my best, Gilbert. It has been quite a ride, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. I really have. And Lori, with the events, we have the September 16th is still a meeting date, October 21st, and the Red, White, and You is going to be virtual, it looks like, right? And then for the conference that's in December, has there been any dialogue on, it was supposed to be in September, is that going to be virtual? We haven't heard.
It's going to be canceled, but I'm still opting for something bigger. We know that our award ceremony is always the highlight of our year. I'm trying to deal with that and put something very special together for the board and for the community. Maybe some panel discussions that week, kind of broaden our one moment to a little bit broader event during that week. I wish the state would reconsider and do a virtual conference, but it's a heavy lift. It is a very heavy lift, as we've seen with all the virtual conferencing that we've done. I listened in to some amazing conferences done by some of my colleagues around the state. And I think we've got some opportunity here to simply get more data, more workforce information out to the community and add that to our award ceremony. So we'll be getting back to you with what can we do in that week. We're definitely going to have our board meeting in October. And at this point, we don't believe the state will be holding their event.
Okay, great. All right, any other comments or business? All right, if everybody's off mute, I don't see anything coming through. All right, then everybody have a great rest of the week. Thank you again for your time and your dedication. And so I will now call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.